Welcome to the special edition of Alone. No script, no cameraman, only 10 specific tools allowed. The prize remains $500,000. Rules are largely unchanged, except for the winning conditions and the start time. Previously, the last person standing won. This time, surviving 50 days suffices. Back to Callie, renewed by the sunlight, she set out to check her traps again. Before reaching them, a ptarmigan appeared, offering an unexpected opportunity. She carefully approached and shot it from a tree, achieving her first successful kill.
It happened. Oh, I can't believe this.
Delighted, Callie processed the chicken by the shore and prepared a pot of chicken and seafood stew. After simmering for half an hour, the delicious meal bolstered her spirits, renewing her determination to continue.
Look.
Wanya plans to trap larger game after hearing something moving on her roof at night, sounding like a fox digging. Deciding to set traps nearby, she reasoned that catching a fox would be as valuable as several rabbits, making her 50-day survival much easier. Considering how cunning foxes are, simple traps and baits won't catch them. Wanya first creates an enclosed area with branches, leaving only a small entrance for the fox. She places the rabbit organs she saved earlier inside and secures a noose at the only entrance. Now, she can just wait for a fox to fall for it. Late at night, a scream is heard from the trap. Wanya wanted to check immediately but couldn't find her headlamp. She thought it would be okay to wait until morning, but by then she discovered the trap only caught the fox's leg and, unexpectedly, it chose to amputate its leg to escape. It likely didn't get far, so Wanya started a thorough search but found nothing within 100 meters. It seems she can only hope another fox gets caught, or for the injured one to return. By day 16, frost has started forming on the island's vegetation, and snow seems imminent. Before it sets in, contestants need to stock up on food. Michelle spends each day foraging and checking traps, hoping for protein sources beyond mussels. While bending to collect berries, she finds a rabbit in one of her traps. Unlike Callie and Wanya, who get visibly excited about their catches, Michelle remains calm, quickly preparing the rabbit for cooking right there, turning it into a wilderness feast.
Just let this boil. Liver is so weird. And the heart.
Callie remains optimistic, even as frost covers the landscape. Sitting by the sea, drinking tea, and watching the ice move, she seems unfazed by the potential food shortage. Seeing seals play in the water, she decides to build a large fishing trap. Her area lacks deep water, making fishing unlikely, but a trap might just work. Not expecting much, she'd be satisfied with a small fish a day. After weaving a fishing net from paracord, she constructs a frame with vines and sticks, then wraps the net around it. The trap almost complete. Callie can't wait to try it out. However, with such a large opening, the trap needs a funnel-shaped entrance to prevent fish from escaping. Callie carves spikes around the rim and hangs ptarmigan organs inside as bait. When the tide rises, the trap will be fully submerged, requiring weights to keep it down. To attract fish, Callie even performs a spirited dance. Back to Wanya, she plans to upgrade her shelter as the temperature drops, anticipating soon being covered in snow. She digs a large pit for a fireplace and heads to the beach to select stones, avoiding those that absorb moisture and could explode when heated. After several trips, she chooses granite, using it to build sturdy, fireproof pillars filled with clay. She places a large flat stone on top for cooking and constructs a chimney, necessary for proper ventilation. After cutting an opening in the roof and securing it with wood, she continues to stack stones, ensuring the chimney is taller than the shelter for effective smoke exhaust. Once completed, Wanya tests her luxurious wilderness fireplace, and it works perfectly. By day 18, Amos is back to collecting mussels. Although not a substantial food source, they are necessary since his bear hunting plans are yet to succeed, and traps often return empty. After a fruitless half-day in the woods and finding no ptarmigan, he spots bear tracks but ends up empty-handed, guessing the bear is as hungry as he is and also out searching for food. Realizing continuing the search is a waste of energy, he heads home to eat seaweed and mussels. The crackling campfire reminds him of a past season when he accidentally set a fire before leaving, which everyone thought was intentional, much like sparks that unexpectedly jump.
No.
Today is Callie's 19th day in the competition. The first thing she did upon waking was check her traps, but both the bird snare and the noose were empty, including her most anticipated fishing trap. Relying on the sea yet unable to catch fish is frustrating, leaving her to continue eating seaweed and mussel stew. While this sustains her short term, it's hard on her stomach and taste buds. Indeed, at 3 a.m., Callie suffered severe vomiting and diarrhea throughout the night. By morning, walking was a struggle due to severe dehydration, posing a life-threatening situation. While others might have called for rescue, Callie persisted, determined not to be defeated by mussels, similar to Wonia, who, aside from eating a rabbit and a ptarmigan, also relied mostly on seaweed and mussels. Wonia's previously stored mussels are nearly depleted, prompting her to restock during low tide. She filled her breeding pool to the brim, ensuring enough food to last a week. In her spare time, she often hikes to the mountains to set traps and gather the remaining berries. Meanwhile, Amos might dislike mussels, focusing instead on hunting. However, he's not catching meat, and his hair is falling out from severe malnutrition. Today, his traps were empty again, so he resumed his bear hunt. Unfortunately, he was thwarted by a squirrel. After hesitating, he finally took a shot, only to scare the squirrel away, leaving him demoralized. It's been 5 days without meat, and he feels it might be better just to stay in his shelter. Callie managed to pull through her ordeal but remained weak from dehydration. She decided to smoke herself with herbal smoke, a healing method used by humans for thousands of years. Mussels and seaweed are off the menu for now, and she's too weak to hunt in the mountains, so she depends on her traps. Yet, the ptarmigan trap and snares yield nothing, her expression growing increasingly fixed with repeated disappointments. Without a new source of protein, the $1 million prize seemed out of reach until her expression suddenly brightened. It seems her trap caught something. Although a squirrel doesn't offer as much meat as a rabbit, it's certainly better than starving. Callie quickly skinned and stewed the entire squirrel, needing a substantial meal to recover. After his hunting failures, Amos has been despondent, staying inside to carve wooden spoons, planning to give them to his mother when he returns home. The 7th season took a heavy toll on him, requiring a long recovery. Facing harsh conditions and scarce resources, he decided to withdraw from the competition, choosing health over the $500,000 prize. Raising a child requires money, but presence is more crucial. Going home early seemed the wisest choice, leaving all male contestants eliminated this season. The 3 remaining female contestants continue to endure. Michelle even finds time for crafts, pulling lots of seaweed at the beach and using fish hooks and lines to secure it. Initially, it seemed she was making a fruit bowl, but it turned out more like a basket. After Wonia added feathers, it resembled a hat. Its actual use might just be to pass the time. Today is Wonia's 21st day in the competition. If she can last another 29 days, she will win the prize money. With a shelter and fireplace already set up, her focus is now solely on gathering food. She finds the sea's offerings easier to collect than land animals like rabbits, so she forages the shore at every low tide, occasionally discovering new species such as small invertebrates, which are much more valuable than seaweed and mussels. After filling 4 pots with mussels, she found only 3 sea urchins and couldn't resist eating one immediately after cracking its shell open. It was incredibly satisfying. To her surprise, she found a nest of sea urchins while collecting more mussels. Each sea urchin contains about 4 grams of fat, a crucial resource for survival, and together with mussels, they could sustain her for at least a week. Over to Michelle. Today is significant, as she withdrew from Season 8 on this day, having lost significant weight. This time, she prioritized hunting and foraging, leading to a smaller weight loss of only 13 pounds so far. While checking her traps, a ptarmigan unexpectedly crossed her path. Michelle followed cautiously and landed a precise shot, her archery skills proving superior as she leads in poultry kills. After preparing the bird, she started a fire to cook, showing off her slim waist while waiting, demonstrating an effective weight loss method. Just as she was enjoying her meal, another ptarmigan appeared, but she missed this one, unfortunately. By day 24, Labrador is covered in heavy snow. Callie is excited because snow reveals animal tracks, aiding in hunting and trap setting. However, after checking her traps, she found them all empty. It seems she'll have to settle for seal oil and bone stew, as her only significant catch in the last 10 days was a small squirrel. With little else to show, she gives a tour of her shelter, displaying neatly arranged pelts, a chair, tools, firewood, and weapons, with a bed and stone fireplace completing a perfect living environment, except for the sparse food supply. As the temperature drops to -4 degrees Celsius, Juania plans to open her trap-blind boxes and look for animal tracks nearby. Snow benefits hunting but makes resource gathering difficult, especially for firewood. After emptying several traps without hope, she turned around to a pleasant surprise: a rabbit, which is hard to catch as they rarely venture out without snow cover. Having caught 2 this month, Juania might be the luckiest contestant. While waiting for the rabbit to cook, she enjoyed some sea urchin and mussels, the satisfaction indescribable. The substantial rabbit leg was devoured thoroughly, followed by a nourishing broth that revitalized her body and spirit. Michelle is doing well, having eaten a chicken a couple of days ago. The quiet of the night is the hardest, often filled by crafting to alleviate loneliness and hunger. Michelle has carved 4 chess pieces, with plans to create a board once she carves all the pieces, marking her victory. On day 25, lacking food, Callie's emotional and physical state deteriorates. Tonight, she plans to sleep under the stars and northern lights, hoping nature's beauty will heal her spirit despite the sub-zero temperatures. This risky act is a desperate attempt to satisfy either her body or soul. Meanwhile, Juania finds that the stream has frozen, and gathering berries is a stroke of luck. Taking advantage of the clear weather, she intended to cut some tinder but accidentally cut her finger. Even though the wound isn't severe, she must be cautious due to frequent contact with animal carcasses and the risk of infection from open wounds, exacerbated by the cold and malnutrition, which could slow healing and potentially force her out of the competition. Callie emerged from her sleeping bag again, to find everything frosted over. It was time to consider whether to stay or leave. If her traps on land, sea, and air all came up empty, she'd have to give up the challenge and the substantial prize. She could endure hunger, but the physical toll was too great. The frostbite from Season 7 was still vivid in her memory, and she wasn't willing to trade her health for wealth. After finding nothing in her land and air traps, she pinned her last hopes on the fish basket. Due to the low temperatures, the surface of the water had frozen, and the rope and basket were solidly frozen. Callie had to break the ice with a rock. As the basket slowly surfaced, her heart sank to rock bottom. Even a small fish would have kept her going, but the basket was empty. Her last hope vanished, and after much hesitation, she made the call to quit the competition. Her strength was evident to all. It was just bad luck this time. If she could still stomach mussels, maybe she could have persisted. She remains the optimistic Callie, now with a greater appreciation for her health. After Callie's departure, only 2 contestants remained, and the competition heated up. Today is Juania's 28th day. She found fox droppings near her camp, guessing it was from the fox that previously escaped. Its return to mark its territory showed boldness. The noose at the trap's entrance had been moved, and the bait inside was gone, indicating the fox had figured out the trap. Simply resetting the old traps wouldn't work, so Juania decided to double down. She restored the original noose and added a new passage with a differently colored noose. If the first was pushed aside, the second would catch it. After setting this up and reinforcing the trap with branches, she waited for the fox to fall for it. The next morning, Juania rushed to check the trap without even putting on her pants and found the fox had indeed been caught. In many seasons of Alone, foxes often outsmarted contestants, but this time, one had been outsmarted. Although not as large as musk ox or elk, the fox was the biggest catch of the season. If Michelle didn't make a new breakthrough, Juania was on track to win. After processing the meat, she decided to try the fox's eggs first, known for their high nutritional value, including protein, cholesterol, and minerals. Paired with the heart, kidneys, and fat, this meal could recover over 20 days of deficiencies. The only concern was parasites, which could lead to infection if not cooked properly. Meanwhile, Michelle was struggling. Closing her eyes only brought visions of various foods. It had been days since her last chicken meal. Before heading out to check traps, she ate some mussels to boost her energy, as her frail body was prone to sickness. Gaining weight before the competition would have made surviving 50 days much easier. Despite her constant hunting, her weight had dropped rapidly, now barely over 90 pounds. If she couldn't control her weight loss, The production team might have to pick her up soon. After eating 130 mussels and 50 clams, providing about 1,500 calories, she began checking her traps. With no animal tracks in the snow, her bow and arrow were useless. Unfortunately, several traps were empty, worrying her about the days ahead. Then she found a rabbit in one of the traps. Usually calm with her catches, this time she cried tears of joy, showing how precious the rabbit was. It was not just food, but a morale booster. Desperate for nourishment, Michelle quickly skinned the rabbit and decided to eat the kidneys first for their nutrients. On day 30, Wonya took out her spoils, determined to maximize her resources. Not only could she scrape fat from the fur, but once cleaned, it could also provide warmth. She smoothed one end of a log and wedged it between small trees to create a simple scraping beam. The scraping had to be done with moderate force to avoid damaging the outer fur. The process generated heat and pressure, turning the fat to liquid, which could be preserved for a month at room temperature. After cleaning the fat from the fur, it made a very warm scarf. For the past 2 days, it has been continuously snowing. Wonya, apart from fetching water from the lake, spends her time lying in the shelter. The lakeside has become steep and slippery after the snow, and with the current temperatures, falling into the water could incapacitate someone in just 3 minutes. For safety, she built steps with stones. However, as she was preparing to head back after fetching water, a blizzard started up again. With the unpredictable winter weather, Wonya had no choice but to return to her shelter and lie down. Michelle's situation was less comfortable. Despite the heavy snowfall, she had to go out to forage. The rabbit caught 2 days ago wouldn't last long, especially in this cold environment where calorie consumption is much higher. After spending half a day in the woods and finding her dozens of traps empty without any signs of grouse or rabbits, she finally encountered a small squirrel, but failed to catch it. Squirrels are not her preferred prey due to their small size and quick movements. Luckily, the next day, she encountered the squirrel again, and, after several rounds, it did not escape her sight. Ultimately, she managed to catch it and decided to make a hearty soup with it right away. The satisfaction of tasting fresh meat was indescribable. The blizzard lasted several days, with the felt temperature dropping to -18 degrees Celsius. During this time, Michelle continued to check her traps, but always returned empty-handed. Wonya also checked her traps, most of which were buried under the snow, showing she hadn't ventured out much. After clearing the traps, she was soaked and hurried back to her shelter to warm up by the fire, steaming like a freshly cooked chicken. Today is day 34 of the challenge. After several days of blizzard, Michelle could no longer bear it. She needed to check her traps, partly due to extreme hunger, and partly because her shelter lacked proper ventilation, risking carbon monoxide poisoning. After checking the traps and finding them still empty, she was prepared to starve. However, a grouse suddenly appeared, and Michelle immediately shot at it. Surprisingly, the grouse seemed to dodge the arrow, but Michelle, determined not to let this walking jackpot escape, chased it down, finally capturing and stunning it. Michelle, moved by the grouse that saved her life, couldn't help but salivate and decided it deserved a proper send-off, integrating its spirit with her own. After consuming a big leg and a restorative soup, she felt reinvigorated and ready to continue. Over at Wanya's side, she had sealed her shelter very tightly to cope with the blizzard, giving it a bit of a burrow feel. She decided to install a door frame on the shelter, guessing that the strength from the fox meat was helping her undertake such construction in this harsh environment. Although it wasn't a big project, it burned a lot of calories, enough to justify lying in the shelter for a few more days. With the current felt temperature at -10 degrees Celsius, not having a door was like asking for trouble, so she worked overtime to make a wooden door. Now, with both warmth and food secured, she planned to use a new strategy. While hoping to catch rabbits with her traps, she still had mussels as a backup, which could sustain her for many more days. Seeing most traps covered in snow, Wonya wasn't hopeful, but ended up finding one anyway. Not sure if it was caught, she swung her axe in a practiced move, confirming the rabbit's foot was caught in the trap. With the current situation, winning the season seemed likely for her. On day 37 of the survival challenge, the blizzard showed no signs of stopping. Michelle's biggest issue was not hunger, but the thick smoke from heating that couldn't escape. Her eyes had become red and swollen. She hoped sleep would improve things. But by the next morning, the situation worsened. Attempts to rinse her eyes with water were ineffective. More seriously, her vision became very blurry, and she could only see out of half of her left eye. Michelle realized the severity of her condition. Continuing like this could result in losing her eyesight. In the current freezing conditions, not making a fire would lead to frostbite within about 30 minutes, which could worsen her eye condition. The smoke from coniferous trees contains high levels of acid, damaging to the throat and eyes. After a fierce internal debate, Michelle chose to withdraw from the competition. Although the $500,000 prize was tempting, it couldn't buy health. After hanging up the phone, she felt relieved. Michelle knew she wasn't the strongest, but she had done what she wanted to do. Not winning the prize didn't mean failure. Pushing her limits was her real success. Compared to surviving on grass for 21 days in Season 9, this time she was definitely a competent hunter and a qualified wilderness soloist. With Michelle's departure, Wanya would be the season's winner under normal circumstances. However, this season's rules were different. One must last 50 days to be declared a winner. With just over 10 days to go, Wanya also experienced issues. The strong winds caused smoke backdraft, leaving her dizzy, headachy, and with red, blurry eyes similar to Michelle. But Wanya believed as long as it wasn't life-threatening, nothing could stop her progress. Her strategy was to extinguish the fire and crawl into her sleeping bag for a few days. By day 40, things improved. It no longer made sense to keep lying down, so she decided to try ice fishing on the lake. Catching a fish would be ideal, but if not, it would at least add content for editing. After breaking through the ice and setting up the fishing line with squirrel organs as bait, she fished from morning until evening with no luck. Rather than freeze in the harsh conditions, she preferred to lie and win in her shelter. As the challenge neared its end, the days seemed longer for Wanya. Besides chopping wood and fetching water, she spent most of her time lying in the shelter, pushing herself to the brink of mental and physical collapse. Finally, she made it to day 50. To commemorate this significant moment, she built an Inuit cairn and anxiously awaited the crew's arrival. Wanya hadn't seen another person in a long time, and the loneliness, bitterness, and grievances of 50 days were finally vented. As Wanya spoke nonstop, her husband emerged from behind. Thus, the Wilderness Solo Special episode concluded. Wanya not only proved herself by being the last contestant standing this season, but also became the first female champion in the show's history. The $500,000 prize was truly well-deserved.